Starting off this list, in our number 10 spot, we have the Amazon fire. The Amazon rainforest is incredibly important to our Earth as it represents over half of the planet's remaining rainforests. The Amazon comprises the largest and most biodiverse group of tropical rainforest in the world, with an estimated 390 billion individual trees divided up into 16,000 species. And that's just trees. That doesn't even scratch the surface of the plant life, the animal life, and the human life that call the rainforest home. That is why this photo that was taken in July of this year is extremely unsettling. In the summer of 2019, the Amazon was the focus of everyone's attention because large chunks of it had gone up in flames. 2020 ended up being an even worse year for the forest and fires, and unfortunately 2021 isn't any different. In 2020, it is said that fires blazed more than 19 million acres of the world's largest tropical rainforest, and 2021 might be even worse than that. That is a big problem for a multitude of reasons, one of them being that it is now realized that because of these fires, there are areas of the forest that are emitting more carbon than they are absorbing. That may not seem like a big deal, but the Amazon is one of the best defenses we have against climate change, so its health does affect us all, and it's something we should all care about very much. In our number 9 spot today, we have the radio telescope. This is a photo of what was once a secret but is now considered a huge celebratory work. This photo was taken during the construction of China's 500-meter aperture spherical radio telescope. This huge dish was constructed in a natural depression in the landscape and is the world's largest filled aperture radio telescope. The design is absolutely novel, which is why, while the telescope was first proposed in 1994, construction didn't start until 2011. It first observed light in 2016, and after years of testing, it was declared fully operational in January of 2020. If you're interested in space, you'll know exactly why this is such a fascinating and exciting creation. This radio telescope can give us beautifully sensitive observations that could help in the hunt for gravitational waves and give us more information of the mysterious and fleeting blasts of radiation that are known as fast radio bursts. Every step in the world of space exploration could have some wild implications on our world, and it's all very cool. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Pentagon Crash. We have all heard about the devastating September 11th, 2001 attacks, but some of you might not know that on that day, there were actually a few separate coordinated attacks, all a part of the same plan, and one of those attacks was on the Pentagon. This photo was previously classified but eventually was released by the US government, and it shows the absolute devastation that was done by the commercial plane that crashed into the Pentagon building. The plane was able to tear through all 5 rings that existed in the building. All of the people on board the plane that day, as well as 125 people that were in the building at the time, passed away in this horrible event. For obvious reasons, the initial photos of the Pentagon damage were withheld from the public or from circulating in the media, but now that they have been released, it just shows us all another side to that horrible, terrifying day. In our number 7 spot today, we have Operation High Jump. This photo was taken in the late 1940s during Operation High Jump. This was a United States Navy operation that was aimed to establish the Antarctic research base Little America 4. It is said that the goals of this mission were to train personnel and test equipment in frigid conditions, determine the feasibility of establishing and utilizing bases in the Antarctic, as well as scoping out possible base sites, examining and amplifying the existing stores of knowledge of several different kinds of conditions in the area, such as geological, geographical, and meteorological, and this final one, which was initially denied, but apparently also to consolidate and extend the United States sovereignty over the largest practical area of the Antarctic continent. This final one was publicly denied for quite some time. This photo shows one of the ships belonging to the United States Navy stuck between 2 of the Arctic's icebergs. In our number 6 spot today, we have a UFO report. This photo is of a previously classified document from 1963. Although the document still has a lot of information that has been blacked out, the document is the description and report of an unidentified flying object or UFO encounter. This is said to have taken place over the desert of Nevada, and the report was written in detail in order to have a written record of this event. The document is said to be the authentic report from the FBI, which is exactly why some of the details have been omitted. This might seem like less of a big deal now, as in this day and age we have declassified video footage of similar kinds of encounters, but for 1963 this was huge, as discussions of alien or extraterrestrial life is a big part of our modern society. This document shows that that these things have been on our minds for many, many years now. In our number 5 spot today, we have a flying saucer. Speaking of aliens and UFOs, one place on Earth that has a multitude of alien stories coming from it is of course none other than Area 51. This site is no stranger to conspiracy theories, and this declassified photo taken at the location might give us a little insight into how these theories began. This photo clearly shows a strange disc-like object next to some more regular looking planes, and I mean, to be fair, if we saw that disc flying through the air, it does resemble the flying saucer type UFO that used to be talked about in the mainstream as the preferred alien mode of transportation. As it turns out, this photo is actually of an experimental aircraft that was made by the United States Air Force, of course, which is why the letters USAF can be seen on the craft. This was one of the few aircrafts created for the purpose of trying out various air carriers. Similar ones to this were also created by the government and were actually seen flying over the southwest region of the United States, which surely only contributed to the UFO discussions. In our number 4 spot today, we have the Soviet Spacecraft. This photo shows the construction of the Soviet Buran spacecraft. Apparently, this was the spacecraft that was built in response to the news spilled by Richard Nixon in 1972 that the United States was to build its own brand new spacecraft, which was to be designed by NASA. The Buran was the first spaceplane to be produced as part of the Soviet-Russian Buran program, and in 1988 it actually went on to complete an unmanned spaceflight that was extremely successful. Unfortunately, this craft met its demise in 2002 when the storage hangar it was located in collapsed. The Buran program was suspended prior to this collapse because of a lack of funds and the political situation in the Soviet Union. The collapse was because of structural failure that was caused by poor maintenance, and unfortunately the spacecraft wasn't the only casualty. In far worse news, 8 workers also lost their lives that day. In our number 3 spot today, we have Area 51 Part 2. This is another photo that was taken from Area 51, and it shows another kind of spacecraft that is likely the source of many UFO stories. At this point, Area 51 will likely always be a place that is filled with rumors of our wildest imaginations, even if they were to one day start offering tours of the facility. Rumors span from aliens to mermaids and so much more, and it is believed that the US government is intentionally keeping it all a secret from us. Since the infamous Roswell incident that happened in 1947, the Nevada Air Force Base is going to be the source of many a mystery. While I don't know the exact details of what is going on in this photo, this is just another small insight into what goes on within the mysterious walls of Area 51. In our number 2 spot today, we have this nuclear waste facility. For another Nevada mystery, high up in the mountains of Yucca, there is a super top secret location that has details which are not to be released to the public. I guess that was probably implied when I said the word secret. The reason this facility is so secret is because it is said to hold all of America's nuclear waste. This waste repository was designated by the Nuclear Policy Act amendments of 1987, and basically it is a deep geological repository storage facility. While the project was approved in 2002 by the 107th United States Congress, as of April 14, 2011, federal funding for the site came to an end. This site was the focus of many fights, as there were tons of people who were extremely opposed to it. The closure of the site has left the United States government and American nuclear power plants without any designated long-term storage facility. This photo is said to have come from the site of the nuclear waste storage facility. In our number 1 spot today, we have the experiment. This photo is an example of how, for a long time, the United States has done its best to stay on top of all of the latest kinds of technology and the most cutting-edge equipment. This photo is showing some kind of test that was being done on a prototype ejection seat. While this was once a classified photo, of course back when this was new technology, the Central Intelligence Agency has since released the photos in order to provide information on the technology that was being created during what now seems like the olden days of science. These times truly are not far off at all, and it's incredible to see how far we've come in so little time. This photo serves as a super cool reminder of just how technologically advanced we really are, although sometimes we may take that for granted. In our number 10 spot today, we have John Lennon. Of course, we all know John Lennon as one part of the Beatles who went on after they disbanded to have a very successful solo career. Lennon was not only a musician but also a peace activist who was strongly anti-war. He was not afraid to display his activism and held a 2-week anti-war demonstration. There was a period of 3 years where the Nixon administration was trying to have him deported for his criticism against the Vietnam War. On December 8, 1980, Lennon was leaving the Dakota apartment complex when he was stopped by a man named Mark David Chapman. Lennon signed an autograph for Mark, which is what is happening in this photo, and then Lennon went on his way. Little did he know, Mark was going to shoot him later that night. Once Lennon returned to the apartment complex, Mark was there waiting for him to commit his crime. Mark has said he did it mostly for the attention, which is so horrifying, but Mark is also a very religious man who explained that Lennon once saying that the Beatles were more famous than Jesus is what really pushed him to commit this crime. It is very crazy that this photo was captured when Lennon was being kind to who he thought was a fan, and no one could have predicted what would happen just a few hours later.
In our 9th spot, we have naked Prince Harry. Before Harry met Meghan, he was quite the wild royal and troublemaker. Back in 2012, naked photos of Harry partying up during his trip in Las Vegas got leaked online. Prince Harry was photographed playing a game of strip billiards with his friends in his VIP suite. In the photo, we see Harry holding his junk, while a naked girl stands behind him holding him. In another photo, we see the backside of Harry with his arms wrapped around the naked girl. I wonder what the Queen had to say when she saw these photos. Yikes. Coming in at number 8, we have Bill Clinton. It's no surprise that a number of high-up, powerful, wealthy individuals had ties with Jeffrey Epstein, including Bill Clinton. If you don't know the whole Jeffrey Epstein scandal, I suggest you look into it, but it's hella dark and disturbing. He forced a number of young individuals into doing things with him and his friends and anyone else with a lot of money. It's believed that Bill knew what Jeffrey was doing and was a part of some of it. Here is a photo of Bill with one of Jeffrey's victims, Shantae Davies. When the photo was taken, Davies was only 22 years old. She is seen rubbing Clinton's shoulders while they all wait for their plane to Africa in 2002. Apparently, it was Ghislaine Maxwell's idea for the young girl to help Bill out with his stiff back and give him a massage. Although Davies said that that's the most intimate that she got with Bill, it's still a very compromising photo of him. Having connections with Epstein in the first place tarnishes his reputation, one of the reasons why he has tried to bury this part of his past. Moving on, at number 7, we have topless Mark Zuckerberg. Okay, well, seeing a guy topless is nothing scandalous, but a picture of Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, shirtless? Well, apparently Mark was really embarrassed when this photo got leaked, and his coworker that leaked it accidentally got in trouble. Let's take a look at this photo, shall we? Sorry, Mark. This photo was taken at some weird private party. Shirtless Mark is surrounded by a number of other shirtless dudes. Like I said, it's not even a bad photo, but Mark was not happy about it going around. Apparently, it was accidentally posted by Facebook's director of engineering, Andrew Bosworth. As soon as he realized it had been leaked, he took it down immediately, but the internet was too fast and screenshotted it. In our 6th spot, we have the Bohemian Grove. The Bohemian Grove is a secret and controversial club that meets in the California woods every year. The club consists of a number of rich men. Among the attendees are past and present presidents, government members, and business leaders. It's kept very hush-hush. What happens at this retreat thing stays there. Some say it's a cult, where they do human sacrifices among other illegal and spooky things. But since no one has yet infiltrated the club, we still don't really know what goes on there. But there are some photos that have gotten leaked, like pictures of a number of the men in weird cloaks surrounding a burning effigy, to pictures of some of the members seated around a huge dining table. Since this club is so controversial, I doubt the members want their pictures from the club leaked. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with Mark Zuckerberg surfing. I'm pretty sure you all have seen this photo of Mark surfing in Hawaii. It became a viral photo and a meme. Why? Well, because Mark has way too much sunscreen on his face. He really packed that on all over his face, and it left a very noticeable white cast. I mean, good for him for taking sun safety seriously, and you know, skin cancer is no joke. But due to the fact that he became a laughingstock over the photo, I bet he didn't want anyone seeing those photos in the first place. Plus, it kinda ruins his reputation. Like, it's hard to take him seriously with that photo floating around, and all the jokes associated with it. Coming in at number 4, we have Kate Middleton's topless pictures. Looks like Harry isn't the only one in the royal family to stir up some controversy. Back in 2012, Kate and William were in France vacationing when the paparazzi took some photos of the pair. In the photos, Kate was suntanning and she was topless. The paparazzi then sold the photos to the French magazine Closer, who then published them. Obviously, she and the rest of the royal family were horrified and took legal action. In the end, the magazine company had to pay 100,000 euros in damages for publishing the photos. And 2 staff members were fined an additional 90,000 euros to pay to Kate Middleton and Prince William. Pretty sure every copy of this photo has been destroyed. And for Kate's sake and privacy, let's hope it stays that way. In our third spot, we have Barack Obama's party. I didn't know Barack Obama was a big partier, but these photos prove otherwise. Just this year, Barack Obama threw a huge birthday bash for his 60th birthday. But it caused quite the uproar. Why? Well, photos from that night show a room packed full of maskless people in the middle of the pandemic. Especially since Barack is a huge political figure, you would think that he would set a good example, or at least practice what he's been preaching. Either way, Obama was under fire after photos of him dancing at this epic party were posted. In our second spot, we have Prince Harry's inappropriate costume. Prince Harry was quite the royal troublemaker back in the day, making headlines with a number of scandals. Well, back in 2005, Harry was seen dressed up in a Nazi soldier uniform while attending a costume party. The costume consisted of wearing a red Nazi insignia on his left arm. Here are some of the photos from that night. Not only that, but he was photographed drinking and smoking in the outfit, which looks really freaking bad on the royal family. In the end, Prince Harry did apologize, saying, and I quote, "I am very sorry if I caused any offense or embarrassment to anyone. It was a poor choice of costume and I apologize." Let's just say that this is definitely one picture that Harry certainly wants to leave in the past. And in our number 1 spot today, we have Bill Gates. Bill Gates is another wealthy man who had ties with Jeffrey Epstein. Photographed here is a picture of the two at Jeffrey's Manhattan mansion in 2011. Over the years, Bill has denied his relationship with Jeffrey, but the two were friendlier than he likes to admit. Apparently, the first time they met was in 2011 after Epstein pleaded guilty to some of his crimes. But that didn't stop Bill from becoming close with him. He then proceeded to hang out with him on a number of different occasions. He went to Epstein's Manhattan town at least 3 times, one of those times being late at night. What were you doing there, Bill, so late, huh? He also flew on Epstein's plane a couple of times. In 2019, Gates said, and I quote, "I met him. I didn't have any business relationship or friendship with him." Which clearly wasn't the truth because they met repeatedly. But anyways, it seems like Bill doesn't want anyone to see any photos that he has with Jeffrey. He doesn't want to get roped into the legal and disturbing things that Epstein was into.
Kicking off our list at number 10. Late night dip. Alright, it wouldn't be a Taylor McWaters list if we didn't mention aliens more than once. This video was leaked last year in May. The footage is actually from 2019. It was recorded in San Diego. The Pentagon has since confirmed its authenticity. The UAP, the unidentified aerial phenomenon here, we don't say UFOs anymore, that's so old school. The UAP is sphere-shaped and it's flying at extremely high speeds. No exhaust, no propulsion system, just a metal ball whipping by San Diego. The sphere then vanished into the water afterwards. So in case you're wondering, no, it didn't land, no aliens got out, they're like, hey, how fast was I going? No, none of that. We have no answers. No answers yet.
In our 9th spot, we have the aliens. It seems like NASA and Area 51 might be hiding aliens. What's new? The photo I'm about to share with you is a leaked photo of aliens hidden in Area 51. The photo was taken in the 1980s and years later someone leaked it online. I don't know about you, but that looks exactly like a space alien to me. And it looks like they're running some sort of tests on them or something. Now of course, people think that this photo is fake. Go ahead, believe whatever. Just know that there are tons of individuals that believe it to be real. Plus it's never been debunked. Take what you want for that. Coming in at number 8, we have the second sun. According to astronomer Paul Cox, there is a second sun in our solar system and NASA is keeping it a secret. Why would they do that? I don't know, because they can. So Paul discovered this after using his telescope to stare at the planets. He actually live streamed him doing this, and while doing so, he pointed to a black dot, which was Mercury. He said that this was the location of the second sun. He said, and I quote, "You may be asking yourself, what is that large round thing to the right of the sun? Well, that's our second sun. I don't know if you knew that we had a second sun, but there it is. It is normally hidden from view. NASA and other organizations usually hide that stuff away from us." Now, I don't know why NASA would hide this from us, but apparently they are, and there's a second sun out there. In our 7th spot, we have the Spacex Explosion. Back in 2020, a NASA worker leaked video and photographic evidence of a SpaceX explosion. NASA was furious when they found out and sent out a memo to all workers saying that they would be fired if they publicly shared photos and videos from the Space Center again. And then someone leaked that memo. Anyways, NASA was all like, nah, nothing happened, nothing exploded. Then the video surfaced and they're like, oh snap, we're caught. It started when people saw smoke coming over the space coast and were like, what's going on over there? And NASA failed to properly explain. But like I said, things got leaked and they were exposed. In our 6th spot, we have Planet X. So astronomer Paul Cox says that NASA has proof of Planet X. It's a broken planet that is behind the sun that he believes will eventually crash into Earth and wipe out all of humanity. But obviously, NASA doesn't want anyone to know this, which is why they're hiding it from all of us. And I genuinely hope that this isn't true, and that Paul's lying, and that he knows nothing, because that's terrifying. We are now at our 5th and halfway mark with the trees on Mars. A weird shot taken of Mars revealed what looked like dark trees rising from the surface. Like, it straight up looks like trees and shrubs are growing there, which we know isn't possible. So then, what is it? Well, NASA says that it's just an optical illusion and it's not actually trees. But other people think that NASA is trying to already grow things on Mars, or that this is part of an alien structure. Who knows? But NASA's being hella sketchy with this photo. In our 4th spot, we have the lady on Mars. In 2007, people went nuts when the Spirit rover snapped this eerie photo on the planet. It literally looks like a human figure perched on a rock. Now, NASA immediately denied this and said that, it's just a rock. But that didn't stop UFO enthusiasts. They believe that this rock is actually a female figure made by aliens, or that it is an alien. Like, look at that. How can that be a rock? Like, there's fully arms and clothing on it. I'm sorry, I don't believe it. Nice try, NASA. Better luck next time. That's a woman. In our 3rd spot, we have the space guests. A couple of years ago, a Russian cosmonaut aboard the International Space Station noticed 3 unusual lights fly by their craft. Thankfully, they got it on film. The cosmonaut believes that what he saw and captured was indeed a UFO flying by. He said, and I quote, 5 objects appear flying alongside with the same distance. What do you think those are? Meteors, satellites, or ... The lights are in a straight line and apparently were hanging around that area for almost a minute before disappearing. He has no explanation for it besides it being a UFO spacecraft. In our 2nd spot, we have the alien statue. In 2019, NASA accidentally leaked some photos that we shouldn't have been able to see. So they released photos taken by their Mars robot Opportunity. In one of the shots, someone pointed out that there appears to be a dark object near one of Mars's craters. It looks like this object has a long arm, a bulky chest, and 2 leg fragments. One person said, and I quote, "It looks like an actual statue. There seems to be so many anomaly stones on Mars that at some point one must admit that sometimes a rock is an ancient artifact," whereas others believe that this is an alien's corpse that is decomposing. But what do you think? It certainly looks like an alien to me. And in our number 1 spot today, we have the alien city. So there's a theory out there that aliens do actually live on the moon. However, they inhabit the dark side of the moon, aka the side of the moon facing away from us that we can't see. Well, a man named Scott Waring found physical evidence to prove this. He obtained satellite images from the dark side of the moon and saw that the moon has structures that cast shadows. Take a look for yourself. If you zoom into the photos, you can see a bunch of weird objects on the moon's surface. That's not the normal texture of the moon. Those those look like structures. So he believes that aliens are for sure on the moon and that NASA has been covering it up for years. Not only that, but the images that NASA chose to share with the public had been altered so that the objects were edited out. And then NASA added fake craters in that location. Why would they do that? Huh? That's suspicious. Yeah, that's hella sus. Starting off this countdown, we have these space monkeys. If you're an animal lover, then this one is gonna break your heart. Before sending humans into space, animals were launched into space to see how space travel would affect them. They typically chose primates for their close relation to humans. Obviously, looking back at that is hella messed up. A number of monkeys sadly passed away from these tests. I mean, the first monkey sent into space died from suffocation. There's photos of him being prepped and getting ready for space, and now looking at those photos, it's just hella disturbing. So now NASA has removed all the photos they have of their test subjects. They don't want people finding out their controversial past. Of course, you can still find these photos online today, but NASA still has tried to cover it up.
In our number 9 spot today, we have Cyclone Kenneth. In 2019, the intense tropical Cyclone Kenneth ripped through Mozambique, making it the strongest tropical cyclone to hit the country since modern records began. The cyclone not only affected Mozambique, but also caused significant damage to the Comoro Islands and Tanzania as well. Cyclone Kenneth took the lives of at least 52 people, and it was estimated that it cost about $100 million in damages. To make matters worse, Kenneth was striking Mozambique just a month after a hurricane had devastated the northern part of the country. This photo was taken from the air looking down on a village that lies just north of Pemba, Mozambique, and you can clearly see the amount of damage and devastation the storm caused. As someone who is exceptionally lucky to have never experienced anything like this, I can't even imagine how terrifying and difficult it would be to go through. In our number 8 spot today, we have the lipstick killer. This is a photo that comes to us from December 10th, 1945. If looking at this image gives you a shudder down your spine, that absolutely makes sense, as it was written by a terrible person known as the lipstick killer. This photo was an image of a note he left written on the wall at one of his crime scenes. The photo comes from the apartment of Frances Brown, as just before he wrote this message, he took her life. After this message was left, he ended up taking the life of one other person before he was finally caught by police 6 months later. The message scrawled in the photo reads, quote, "For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself." It is an absolutely chilling note with a horrifying backstory. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Peru flooding. In March of 2017, Peru suffered the worst flooding that had been seen in decades. Heavy bouts of rain that saw 10 times more rainfall than normal caused rivers to overflow, mudslides to destroy roads and farms, and mass amounts of flooding that took the lives of more than 70 people and displaced thousands. This photo was taken on March 17th, 2017, and it shows a group of people stranded in the floodwaters holding onto a rope trying to make their way through the water and to safety. This photo clearly shows the severity of the situation, and when this photo was taken, the end wasn't even near for the wet weather. This must have been an absolutely frightening time for those living in Peru, as well as for those who were tasked with the rescue efforts. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Europe flood. This photo comes to us from the summer of this year, as people across Western Europe experienced disastrous flooding. After days of heavy rain, it ended up turning rivers that were usually normal and calm into raging currents that ravaged the streets and left cars and power lines being swept away, homes engulfed, and residents trapped. This photo was taken in Erfstadt, which is just southwest of Cologne, and it shows how a bunch of these houses collapsed due to subsidence, which is the sudden sinking of the ground's surface. Unfortunately, these floods caused many people to lose their lives, mostly in Germany, but there were sadly dozens of people in Belgium as well, all of which is an absolute tragedy. Rescue workers worked tirelessly to help as many people as possible escape this terrible situation. In our number 5 spot today, we have the Oroville Dam. On February 13th, 2017, in Oroville, California, the Oroville Dam, which is the tallest dam in the United States that holds back a reservoir that contains 1.1 trillion gallons of water, that dam's main and emergency spillways were damaged. This led to the emergency evacuation of 188,000 people over concerns that the dam's emergency spillway might fail. This was all caused by torrential rain and floods in the region, which then began to reveal the extensive damage in the emergency spillway. This photo shows the dam releasing 100,000 cubic feet of water per second into the main spillway. Luckily, a major disaster was avoided in this situation because of quick action by those responsible for the dam. In our number 4 spot today, we have the house of a monster. This photo was taken from the inside of serial killer Ed Gein's house, where he once used to live with his mother. If you're not familiar, Ed Gein was an absolute monster and is actually the basis for many horror movies today because of how horrifying his crimes were. Inside of his home, authorities not only found different household items that were made out of body parts, some from the victims of his crimes and some from the graveyards he would go and search and snatch from. The photos that were taken from inside of the home only scratched the surface of the horrors that were found inside. For a while, for some unknown reason, it was thought that they might use the house as a tourist attraction, but thankfully the house ended up burning down, and honestly I truly feel glad that it doesn't exist anymore. If it did, would you have gone there? In our number 3 spot today, we have Cyclone Saroha. Earlier this year, Indonesia was hit with devastating floods and landslides due to Cyclone Saroha. The damage was done on many remote eastern Indonesian islands, as well as in East Timor. The cyclone caused all of this damage and ripped through before making its way and making landfall in Australia, which is the first storm to do so since 1989. Flash floods took the lives of at least 30 people, but unfortunately this storm took many more lives as well. Relief efforts were made difficult by power outages, blocked roads that were covered in mud and debris, and considering how a lot of damage was done on remote islands, this made it really difficult because the islands were now surrounded by high waves, so access was extremely limited. This photo clearly shows the power of Mother Nature and the devastation storms like this can cause. The most terrifying part is that we are nearly powerless against these forces of nature. In our number 2 spot today, we have an acid drum. This photo comes to us from inside the house of another terrible person, the serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer. This photo was taken from inside of his home after he was found out and caught by authorities. Before his arrest, he was sadly able to take the lives of 17 different people. Although this photo might look kind of plain, the horrors are plentiful. This shot shows a drum full of acid that was located inside of his home. I don't need to tell you what it was used for. I can't imagine the horrors investigators saw when they entered his home, and even previous to that as they investigated his crimes. Thankfully, Jeffrey was caught, and in 1992 he was sentenced to life in prison, but just 2 years later he was killed by a fellow prison inmate. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Dixie Fire. The Dixie Fire burned through a few different counties in California this summer. It is named after the creek that was near where the fire first started on July 13, 2021. After it began, it went on to burn 963,309 acres before it was 100% contained. It became the largest non-complex wildfire in the history of the state of California. The fire destroyed people's homes and belongings and completely burned entire towns, and by July 23rd, it had already become the largest wildfire of the 2021 California fire season and was the cause for the unhealthy air quality that could be seen across the western United States, including states that are as far east as Utah and Colorado. This photo was taken on August 17th and it shows the fire lighting up a hillside in Lassen County. The fire didn't end up being 100% contained until very recently on just October 25th. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have the Tsar Bomb. This is a photo that was taken on October 30th, 1961. It was quite the Halloween spooky fright that year, as this is said to be the largest and most powerful nuclear weapon ever created and tested. The hydrogen aerial bomb was developed in the Soviet Union by a group of nuclear physicists that were under the leadership of Igor Kurchatov. The bomb was dropped by parachute and was detonated autonomously. While this test was meant to be a secret, it turned out to be less than well kept, as it was obviously a huge explosion that was detected by United States intelligence agencies. A secret US recon aircraft called Speedlight Alpha was there monitoring the explosion, and it got so close that it had its anti-radiation paint absolutely scorched off. The photo clearly shows the bomb as it exploded, and it is said that this bomb was 5,000 times stronger than the ones that were dropped on Japan during World War II. That's not to say that those ones weren't strong, because they were absolutely devastating. It's just an example to show how large this one really was.
Number 9. Talos.
Basically, I'm here to announce that we're building Iron Man.
Tactical Assault Light Operator Suit, aka Talos. It was once a project announced back in 2014, and like the former president said, this was supposed to be a modern day Iron Man suit of armor. Didn't end up being like that at all. It was supposed to change warfare entirely, but 5 years later, the project was scrapped. Or was it? It probably wasn't. Of course not. We're still working on Apple Watches. You're telling me they're gonna scrap this? Good joke. On one hand, obviously it's hard to do. We could barely launch Google Maps in one go, let alone a suit of armor. I imagine it's complicated. Sure. But with recent leaks, we can now take a peek at what could have been. See, ideally the suit would have given the user advanced tactical awareness alongside advanced military grade armor, which has an exoskeleton underneath that's wired to the helmet and the rest of the suit. You're pretty much Iron Man. They figured out a few things while creating this suit, but overall this Iron Man armor wasn't close to being like what we're seeing on the big screen. We're getting pretty close. We're getting alarmingly close, I'd say. Number 8, the Kola Well. If you dug a hole through the center of the earth and jumped in, would you come out the other side? Of course not, this isn't a cartoon. But the Arctic Circle back in the 70s sure did look like a cartoon. The deepest hole on the planet. Yeah, let's gather resources and focus on this for a bit. Sure, during the Cold War, we love it. Scientists began working on the project in 1970. For many years, Russian scientists in winter coats were drilling a hole, just down as deep as they could get. What a great job that would be, eh? They got 1/3 through the Baltic continental crust and they found rocks older than 2 billion years. It was quite the project, it was exciting. But eventually they hit this muddy lava, and then in 1992, they stopped drilling. A huge concern here was that demons would be released from the earth. That's fair, that's more than fair, that's an okay concern. We don't want those around, I get it. The previous title for the deepest hole belonged to the United States Bertha Rogers Hole, which reached 31,000 feet. The borehole still remains the deepest artificial point on Earth. Now, it was odd for the United States to focus on beating the Russians to the deepest point on Earth. We talk about the space race often, but we forget about this one. The deep hole race. Stanley Yelnats would be so disappointed in us. We gotta talk about this more. Number 7, radar footage. Now normally when we see leaked footage, be it of UAPs or leaked documents, it's always the worst quality, right? It's always taken with like a BlackBerry curve. It's hard to believe when military footage is horrible quality. Like, we're trying, help us help you. Like, how can we see photos of black holes and not have a photo of a UAP yet, right? Or do we? Well, Jeremy Corbell is here to help. He took to Twitter in May 2021 sharing footage of US Navy ships being swarmed by UAPs. This time we have radar footage from inside the ship. It came from the Combat Information Center in the USS Omaha. This 46-second clip was originally recorded on July 15th, 2019, and you could even hear a dude in the background yell about how fast the objects in the radar are moving. That's how you know it's authentic. It's a guy like, whoa, that's crazy. On that ship too, imagine what he's seen and he's surprised. I'm shook. Number 6, the Amityville photo. A little ghost stuff for us, why not? This photo was taken inside the Amityville house back in 1976. You see it's the boy with the eyes? Nice, you got it, nice, good eye. At first, I thought this was from a horror movie. It looks fake almost, or set up, until you start to read the details. See, this photo was taken with automatic cameras equipped with infrared. So this ghost here probably wasn't expecting a selfie, right? Photographer Gene Campbell took this photo in 1976. Gene was working with paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren on this case. Yeah, this was long before the movies. They were just really working on this case in real life. This is history. This is so scary. The photo was revealed 3 years after it was taken on the Merv Griffin show, and many believe this is the ghost of John DeFeo, one of the boys who lived there in 1974. Now, you can't really do this anymore, right? You can't just whip out photos from an otherwise, crime scene and be like, okay gang, is this a ghost? Let's take a look. No, there was obvious backlash for obvious reasons. It took 3 years for that photo to reach the public eye, and now all of a sudden everybody is talking about ghosts. Did this help? Probably not. Again, this was long before The Conjuring was ever released in theaters or anything like that. This would have been so random to see on TV, how frightening. Also, who believes in ghosts here? What's the ratio? Comment down below, I'm genuinely curious. I'm like 50-50 in the ghost game. Number 5, quantum computer. This next one is pretty scary, not a fan of this one. Computers are getting more and more advanced by the day. Andrew Garfield told everybody that Spider-Man leak was fake, and we're all like, okay, we'll believe it. Yeah, we believed it. That's how good technology is. It's getting dangerous. Poor Andrew Garfield, but also poor us. We're for sure doomed any day now. But thanks to our man Snowden, Edward Snowden, it was reported in the Washington Post back in January 2nd, 2014, that the NSA is secretly working hard at creating their own computer. It's called the quantum computer, and it cost around $80 million to build. It's a little more expensive than the new iPad. just a touch. This computer is safely stored in a massive room-sized metal box, not intimidating at all, and it's part of a program called Penetrating Hard Targets. So it can break encryptions for just about anyone, anything, finance records, medical records, your old MSN, hopefully not, but maybe. What a nightmare that would be. The NSA is well on their way to breaking every form of public encryption, so we're doomed. This quantum computer can theoretically break through any RSA encryption as well, which for the average computer today, that takes years. The supercomputer can break through a lot faster. So yeah, you better clear that history now while you still can, or else everyone's gonna see. Number 4, more government leaks. Even allies of the United States weren't safe during Edward's leak. Thanks to Snowden, at the end of October 2013, it was leaked that the United States was spying on Germany, France, and Spain, all at the same time. Horrible. The NSA tapped into 35 phones spying on 35 different world leaders, one of which was German Chancellor Angela Merkel, who called out the NSA publicly immediately after finding out and said this act of snooping was just unacceptable between friends. That hits deep, eh? I thought we were friends, we're pulling that card out? Ooh, world leader or not, nobody was safe during these phone calls. It was also reported that the NSA was monitoring calls in Spain for the average folk. Yeah, they monitored around 60 million calls in 1 month. Imagine how boring that job would be. Just some dude listening like. Number 3, North Sentinel Island. Heading over to India, this island is home of the Sentinelese tribe, one of the most forbidden islands on the planet. We don't talk about this island nearly enough. It's fascinating, and it's also equally terrifying. It's located in the Bay of Bengal. North Sentinel Island is about 1,200 kilometers away from India, and while most islands are shrinking or just disappearing, this one actually grew back in 2004. Yeah, the island lifted up a couple of meters during an earthquake, so the west and south sides gained an extra kilometer. Yeah, more room for more inhabitants. Let's talk about them. The inhabitants on this floating cursed island are among the few uncontacted tribes left in the world. They've apparently been there for 50,000 years, and there's no signs of agriculture or even fire, yet somehow this tribe has thrived for this long. And if we try and get close and, talk to them or see what's up, they try and drive everybody away, violently. In fact, back in 2006, 2 fishermen lost their lives because they got too close to the island without knowing who was on it. The Indian government also didn't roll up to the beach after and start interrogating locals. Instead, they made the island now officially forbidden to enter, so stay away. Number 2, the mouse with an ear on its back. What a transition, awesome, we love segues. Back in 1997, Stuart Little here became the test subject to determine if scientists could grow cartilage using chondrocytes, aka cells from a cow. And it worked, and now we're still talking about it today, obviously. It all started when Joseph Vincanti, pediatric surgeon, began designing human organs. This was during a shortage. He wasn't just, bored and started to make ears, he was changing the medical game. And little did he know, he was actually about to change the science game as well. He constructed an ear and then told his brother Chuck and his partner Bob to not bring up the fact that he attached said ear to a live mouse. He's like, please don't mention the mouse, please. How can you not? Here, check out this new ear I made. Hey, one sec, let me catch it. What? It's disgusting. What's going on here? What's this science lab you have? So Chuck spilled the beans. He didn't keep said information to himself. Can you blame him? No. But good thing he leaked the information because now we know cow cartilage can create cells. All because he spilled the beans. Nice. Thanks, Joseph, and also thanks to that mouse that totally didn't volunteer for this life. Can I Q-tip his back? I want to Q-tip his back. Let's clean that little ear for him, I bet that would feel great. It's like a back scratch, but an ear Q-tip at the same time. Imagine those mixed. Stuart Little, he's got it. And finally, number 1, motorized roller skates. This last one, they've been working on for quite a long time. It's one of the craziest things I've ever seen working on this channel, so yeah, I had to end off this list with this. Motorized roller skates, what a dream. Is it happening? Are we close? I sure hope not. This photo was taken at the Sunoco station in Hartford, Connecticut. Context aside, this is an odd one. It's a guy with a briefcase filling up at a gas station and he's wearing roller skates. Is this 2077? No, it's actually 1956. And that futuristic looking man right there, that's Mike Dressler. He was working for a Detroit skate company and he was very dangerously close to gas-powered roller skates. It sounds like something from a cartoon where he's like, oh, I'll get you, pew, and then he blasts off. This would never, don't try this. This is a horrible idea. They would have cost around $250, which today is around $2,400, and its max speed was 17 miles an hour, so you'd still be late and you'd still be buying gas. It was a lose-lose. Imagine this in the closing act of a Mission Impossible movie. How boring would that be? Now obviously the public wasn't supposed to see this. They feared that it would encourage folks to get creative on their own. So yeah, I'll reinforce that. Don't make rocket skates with gasoline. Thanks. Hit that thumbs up and don't make rocket skates. We love it. Don't eat Tide Pods or make your own jet boots. Taylor McWaters, there's a quote for you. There we go.
Starting off this countdown, we have Jeffrey Bezos. In 2019, the founder of Amazon, Jeff Bezos, admitted that his nudes almost got leaked. Basically, someone got a hold of some steamy text messages and nudes that he sent to his girlfriend, and they tried to blackmail him with it. But before they could do so, he came out and admitted what he had done, and he described it in detail. One of his texts said, and I quote, "I love you alive, girl. I will show you with my body and my lips and my eyes very soon." Now, any person, celebrity, billionaire or not, probably doesn't want their nudes getting leaked. On top of that, Jeff was married at the time that this information came out, so it looked pretty bad on him. But he claims that he was separated from his wife before dating his new lady. Either way, Bezos didn't want us to see that side of him, and frankly, I don't want to either.
In our number 9 spot today, we have the Stanford prison experiment. This photo comes from 1971 during the Stanford prison experiment. For those of you who aren't familiar with this experiment, it started on August 14th, 1971 and was led by university psychology professor Philip Zimbardo. The experiment took student volunteers and divided them into 2 groups. One group of prisoners and one group of guards, and they placed all of the volunteers into a fake prison that was created for the experiment. The experiment aimed to see if and how quickly humans would turn evil under the right conditions with the right amount of power. Basically, it was just to try and answer the question of if humans are inherently good or inherently evil. I think everyone was shocked with the results. After only 6 days, the experiment needed to be concluded because the guards began absolutely tormenting the prisoners. It really showed the kinds of things humans can be capable of even after such a short time. This photo is definitely reminiscent of that experiment and serves as our reminder. In our number 8 spot today, we have the Pioneer's Defense. This photo is known as the Pioneer's Defense, and man, does it ever look creepy. This photo comes from 1937 and was taken by a Russian photographer named Viktor Bula. This photo takes place in the Leningrad area, which is now known as St. Petersburg, which is the 2nd largest city in Russia. The people in this photo were a part of a group that was the 1930s Russian equivalent of our Boy Scouts, which was called the Young Pioneers. The masks on their faces leave a very eerie feeling, and for a fair reason. These people were doing a military preparation drill, which is the reason for the gas masks. This photo was taken during a time when the country was under the dictatorship of Joseph Stalin, and the residents were constantly unsure of what was going to happen. The country was already seeing death, and people were already frightened just a few years before the start of World War II. In our number 7 spot today, we have the Stanley Hotel. This is a photo of the Stanley Hotel, which is the hotel that inspired the famous Stephen King novel, The Shining. This hotel was under construction in the early 1900s and saw a fateful day in 1911. There was an unexplained explosion that happened in room 217. In the explosion, a chambermaid was seriously injured, but she ended up surviving and actually returning to work. A few years later, she passed away, and ever since her passing, there have been tons of guests who swear they saw her ghost. Guests have said that they have seen her around the halls of the hotel, but the place that gets the most paranormal activity is of course room 217. This is the room where Stephen and his wife stayed for one terrifying night in 1974. Apparently they were actually the only guests in the hotel for this night, which at any other hotel might be cool, but I feel like this is not what you want from a haunted hotel. In our number 6 spot today, we have the Rothschild Surrealist Ball. The Rothschild family is one of the wealthiest and most powerful families there has ever been. For years and years, there have been many rumors swirling about just how powerful and influential they really are, and there are some pretty crazy theories out there. In 1972, the family held a surrealist ball, which is where this photo is from. These photos could be potentially very innocent, but there is just something about these elaborate masks, coupled with the theories about what this family is really up to, that just make it feel very eerie. This party is one of the most legendary there has ever been, and whether or not they really are involved in shady dealings, that still is impressive. In our number 5 spot today we have the Salem UFO. On the morning of July 16th, 1952, this photo was captured by Shell Alpert and has stumped people ever since. This photo shows 4 unidentified objects hovering in the air above Salem, Massachusetts, and was taken at the Salem Coast Guard Air Station. The objects seem to be above the Winter Island and Cat Cove areas, but there really isn't much more that is known about this strange incident. There were a few theories regarding this photo. One is a camera glitch, others think it may have just been light reflecting off of the window that the photo was taken through. But of course there are people who point to similar incidents that happened in the 1950s and of course believe it is proof of extraterrestrial beings. It is very likely we may never know exactly, but the air of mystery it leaves is definitely kind of cool. In our number 4 spot today we have the eruption of Mount St. Helens. Mount St. Helens is a stratovolcano located in Skamania County, Washington. The volcano is best known for its huge and disastrous eruption on May 18th, 1980. This photograph comes from photographer Robert Landsberg, who was of course in the area at the time of this eruption. Before the eruption, he had visited the area in order to photograph and document all of the changes that were happening. On May 18th, he was within a few miles of the volcano when it erupted. Since he unfortunately was located so close to the explosion, he knew that he would be unable to escape this disaster, so instead of focusing on the impossible, he focused on taking as many pictures as possible. Robert was obviously incredibly brave and dedicated, but also very smart. After snapping as many photos as he could, including this one, he then secured his camera in his backpack and covered his backpack with his body. He knew he was unlikely to survive, but wanted to make sure that these photos did. His body was found 17 days later with his backpack still underneath him. His film was of course developed and has provided geologists with some really valuable insights with his close documentation of the eruption. In our number 3 spot today we have this burst of joy. You might be looking at this photo wondering how this extremely joyous photo could hold any dark secrets. Well, this photo won a Pulitzer Prize, and for a good reason. This photo was captured by Slava Vetter on March 17, 1973 at the Travis Air Force Base in California. The photo shows United States Air Force Lieutenant Colonel Robert L. Sturm and his family. This was taken as he was being reunited with his family after 5 years of being held as a prisoner of war in North Vietnam. On October 27, 1967, he was leading a flight of F-105 when he was shot down over Hanoi and held captive until March 14, 1973. I can't imagine what this must have been like for his family, because there was a chance that he could have not come home at all. The girl with her arms wide is his 15-year-old daughter, but the look on all of their faces truly captures the pure joy that they are all feeling. In our number 2 spot today we have the frozen man of Mount Everest. This photo comes from 1996 and it shows Beck Weathers getting treated after the Mount Everest disaster. The Mount Everest disaster took place on May 10th and 11th in 1996, where there was a blizzard on the mountain that ended up stranding and taking the lives of 8 people who were aiming to descend the mountain. Beck was a part of the team who was climbing the mountain on this fateful day, and he ended up suffering from snow blindness during the climb. He actually fell into a hypothermic coma because it was so cold, and he suffered severe frostbite on his face, hands, and feet. Pretty miraculously, he not only survived, but ended up walking back down to camp in order to get help, where he was then taken by helicopter to receive treatment. He ended up needing his hands, part of his feet, and even his nose amputated, but he survived this whole ordeal, and that is the most important thing. In our number 1 spot today, we have the Diatlov Pass incident. If you have never heard of the Diatlov Pass incident, you better buckle in because it is so terrifying. This photo was taken in February of 1959 as 9 young Soviet hikers set out to trek through the Ural Mountains. They had set up camp, and sometime during the night, something happened that made them cut their way out of the tent and all flee the site. Leaving in such a rush, they were of course underdressed for the bitterly cold weather, and 6 of them ended up passing away from hypothermia, which is extremely tragic. The other 3, however, is where this story takes a frightening turn. Like I mentioned before, No one knows why they fled the tent in the first place, and the last 3 hikers were found passed away with severe signs of physical trauma that no one could agree on what had caused it. In 2019, the investigation was reopened, and just last year there was a conclusion that a kind of avalanche called a slab avalanche was the cause of these injuries. Regardless of what happened, this whole incident was of course very tragic, but the mystery behind it definitely takes it to a spooky place.